Assalamualaikum. We're gonna do a short khutbah today. I'm just gonna walk you through some things beforehand, so people want to turn their attention this way. Um, do a quick presentation. You can move up here so that as people come in, they'll be able to fill in the room. If you guys want to fill in the space, that would be appreciated. If you all want to also just move up so as people come in, inshallah. So our students here are doing charity week this week, mashallah. I think we've already raised about $30,000, which is really amazing in 5 or 6 days. The effort is something that is directing funds towards orphans and children in need. And so what I wanted to do before we stand for the khutbah is to just share with you some narratives, images of conflict zones, refugee camps that I've been blessed to visit pre-COVID, to give you a little bit of insight on what it is that we're talking about when we're trying to assist people in need, and why it's imperative that each one of us in this room jumps up to be a part of the initiative. Right? Because it can be very easy to say somebody else is supposed to be doing X, Y, or Z. And that's fine. Someone else is supposed to be doing it also. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be doing what we're supposed to be doing too. And I want you to think about this now, not through a prism of guilt or a prism of self-remorse or anything like that, but you have to meet it with real love, real mahabbah. The Prophet ﷺ, in numerous hadith, he says that we will not enter paradise until we have faith. This is a construct that exists within the prophetic tradition in numerous narrations. And in one such narration, he says that you will not enter paradise until you believe, and you will not believe until you love one another. In another narration, until you love for your brother and by default sister, which you love for yourself. I was in Texas and I shared this hadith on the minbar at Jummah one day. And I was speaking about it in a recognition of a universal acceptance of love, an embracement of shared humanity. Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah, who's one of the more prolific hadith commentators and compilers within the Sunni tradition of Islam, he, who many of you have likely seen his collection of 40 hadith, the Arba'een an-Nawawi, he says that in this hadith that talks about loving for your brother what you love for yourself, that the word brother is not in reference to your brother in faith, but your brother in humanity. When I was in Texas and I was sharing this hadith in the context of a little bit of what I'm going to talk to you about today, an elderly man came up to me afterwards, who was probably somebody that went to Jummah his whole life. Thank you. Arguably, one could assume that for 40 or 50 years, he went to Jummah. And he was talking to me now, not in a way where he was upset or agitated, but he was just trying to understand. And he said, are you trying to tell me that our religion says that we have to love people just because they're people? And I said, yeah. He said, anybody, just because they're human. He said, I've never heard this before. I want you to think about this. This man's probably 60, 70 years old. Likely has gone to Jummah 40, 50 years of his life. That means 30, 40 minutes every Friday for decades and decades. He's never heard that Muslims are supposed to love people, or had any conversations about what does that mean and what does it look like. I want you to think about that within yourself in terms of what does faith mean? What does it mean to have ethics? What does it mean to have values? What does it mean to be Muslim? I want you to think now and recenter yourself, because listening with love means you got to put the distractions away and recognize that the people that I'm about to talk to you about, these are actual people who I've seen face to face. Children, orphans, widows, refugees. You don't want to have guilt or remorse or any of these things be your motivation. but to recognize what it means to love for somebody, even for only the reason that it is a deficiency in my faith. The Prophet is saying, when I don't have love for people. Does that make sense? You guys can all move in this way, because what's going to happen is people are going to clutter. And you know what's really great? This is not the khutbah, so I can say whatever I want to. You can say to me too. Just in general, when you come for Jummah, move in this way, because then people start to fill up near the doors, and they assume the room is filled, and it's not. This man's name is Anwar Khan. Anwar Khan used to be the head of Islamic Relief USA, the organization that your charity week is supporting with its funds disseminated to orphans. I went to Myanmar when they first opened up the border between Myanmar and Bangladesh some years ago, and a mass exodus of about 500,000 refugees fled genocidal violence, the Rohingya refugee community, from Myanmar to Bangladesh. When I got there the first time, I was trying to go to Myanmar. I got into Bangladesh to a place called Cox's Bazar, and they wouldn't let me into Myanmar because they said, we're worried that someone will kill you. Anwar Khan was there at the same time as me. And he told his staff, he told me, myself, he told others that were there, you can't go in because they are literally burning everything that looks remotely Muslim in the country. If you've ever met Anwar Khan, he doesn't normally look like this. He usually has a much bigger beard. And so what he did as the president of the organization, the man in charge, was trim his beard, shave it off, and cross the border to go into this place where genocidal violence was taking place. But he didn't tell any of his staff or employees to go. He went himself to ensure that the things that the people needed were actually getting to them. I want you to think about this for a moment, because this man is not a good Muslim because he looks Muslim, quote unquote. But he's a good Muslim because he doesn't look so Muslim right now. That he understands the purpose of our faith. And he recognizes that what he needed to do had to get done. And as a leader, it wasn't for him to send somebody else, but without hesitation, he took off the beard and crossed the border into this conflict zone because he knew that people needed help. Every single day, I met people that were here that had been afflicted by genocidal violence. Young children, the elderly, people who came from all backgrounds, all walks of life. When you are being asked to decide whether or not you will simply share a text message, whether you will be present to pray and make dua, there's real kids on the other end. We're going through real difficulty and real hardship. There wasn't one person that I met on this trip where I met these people that couldn't tell me that they hadn't seen loved ones burned alive in front of their eyes. A child can't unsee that. They have to carry that trauma with them for years and years to come. This man was the first person that I met. His name is Nur Alam. And I want you to understand the children around him are his grandchildren. They are orphans. Their parents, they don't exist in this photo. I met Nur Alam the first time I went to this camp, and he said to me on the day of Eid, our holiday, the Rakhine army came to his home, Buddhist mosques. They took his loved ones and locked them into the home and then firebombed the house. They then went to his cattle and livestock, set those on fire. And he said, I took my remaining grandchildren and walked for 3 days nonstop to get to Bangladesh to find some refuge. He said, my brother, Muhammad Ali, they killed him in front of my eyes. And I asked him, what is it that you want? And he said, I just want a safe place for my grandchildren to grow. Now in this camp alone, there are 1 million plus people, let alone we're talking about right now more children who are refugees than in any time in the world. This woman is there with her child. In our tradition, someone is considered to be an orphan if their father is passed away, is deceased. It's 108 degrees, and we're passing out perishables, other things to these people. She is about a 20-minute walk from the closest tent. She's got a child on her hip. I gave her one bag and another bag, and she's got this thing of oil in her hand that you can see. And I had to give her the last thing, and I said, where are you going to put it? And she said, just put it on top of my head. What else can I do? When you think about supporting people like this, you can't see it, but what we did when we went in was build infrastructure. 60 to 80% of the people that were here were women and children. 60 to 80% of 500,000 people, that is now over 1 million people. You think about it. If somebody just drives up with a truck and is passing out things, who's going to be able to get the goods? Usually the young single men, not the mothers. They got to carry their babies everywhere, because if they leave them by themselves, what are they going to do? These are the type of people that just a simple text message exchange, just a simple word of mouth exchange, something that's not just about, I'm going to attend an event or not attend an event, but I'm going to just think about not even donating, but spreading the word, sharing awareness. This young girl I met when we were shooting media in one of these sites. There's no infrastructure, there's no security, and we were atop of a hill that probably had about a 30 or 40-foot drop, a plunge. And she came running where we were and went right around the edge of the hill, the cliff, almost falling to her death. And all of us went to grab her and put her to the side. And when we got her to a safe place, I said to everybody, where is this young girl's parents? How come nobody is watching her? The difficult reality is that she simply isn't someone who no longer has parents as an orphan. She has no mother or father. But as an orphan of genocide, there's not a person in the world who exists that knows that this girl lives. There's nobody left who could tell us her name, how actually old she is, where she came from, when she ended up in this camp. It's a very different kind of aloneness. But she's not alone because we now know she exists. This is why I said to you in the beginning of this conversation that it has to be about love. And it can't be about something else. Because if you listen through a feeling of guilt or a feeling of remorse or a feeling of indifference, then you are listening only through your nafs, yourself. And when you give to only make yourself feel better, you're not going to give everything you can. But when you give with real love and real compassion, real genuine mahabba, you're going to understand that there's a person on the other end of it who they are going to remember you always. I met this guy, you can see he's got some scars on his left hand. He's a grown man. And the wound on his hand and the scars are results that when he was leaving from Myanmar to come to Bangladesh to the refugee camps, soldiers were still firing after him, shooting bullets at him. He said, I got shot in my hand, but I had to keep walking. There's no hospitals or medical facilities or doctors. So I just bandaged my hand by myself after I extracted the bullet on my own. And those scars are left from that. He's probably as old as some of you in this room. You can think about how excruciating that must be for him to go through. What do you think the kids who were 6 years old were doing that this was happening to? The 7-year-olds, the 8-year-olds, the ones who had just witnessed real difficulty. There was one day that I was there that 1,100 children, unaccompanied, came into this camp. They had such life and light to them, such a sense of vibrancy and energy. But you think about what it is, 1,100 in one day, not the whole time, just one day, wandered across the border by themselves. The fortunate ones amongst them likely were simply separated from their guardians and their parents. But the reality is that many of these young people witnessed soldiers kill their mothers and fathers, take their lives in an ultimate sign of real ugliness and wretchedness. And they're trying to now figure out how it is that just like you, with aspirations, with dreams, with goals, where they want to be, where they want to move forward. I got word that in this last year, from the young people who are in this camp, one of them is now a doctor, mashallah. And if one of them can become a doctor, any one of them can become a doctor. You want to think about that when you're choosing whether you're going to study hard or not, what some people actually have to go through to get to where they want to be. But you also want to think about it in terms of what it means to be a person of privilege and how you leverage what you have access to serve those who are underserved and underprivileged. These are the type of young people that your charity week is going to support and sponsor. They're going to help out. You guys want to move up again? We can move in. Just a reminder, this is not the khutbah. We're going to do a short khutbah today, inshallah. The water in this area is deeply, deeply, deeply polluted. You ever been to Bangladesh? It rains a lot in different parts of the country. And in these camps, there's no sanitation or sewage system. This woman's name is Asiya Khatun. Asiya Khatun in this picture, you can't tell, is 9 months pregnant. Asiya Khatun, she walked for 5 days, 9 months pregnant, with her young daughter, who is about 2 or 3, in tow with her, as again, soldiers were shooting at her, and she left her entire life behind. Asiya Khatun is taking water out of one of these holes that the water has washed into. And in these holes, animals are bathing in this water. They're going to the bathroom in it. The sewage from the sanitation systems that are there, the toilets that are made for dozens, but thousands are using, all of that's going into this. And I asked her, 9 months pregnant, what are you going to do with this water? She said, we're going to clean our tent with it, and I'm going to wash some clothes with it. And then really quickly, she said to me, and then we're going to drink it. I said, why would you drink this? And she said, we have nothing else to drink. She said, my 2-3-year-old daughter, she's already very sick as a result of it. I don't even want to think about what's happening to the baby that's in my stomach. When I saw this brother, I never could imagine that it was possible to actually see hunger, to see hunger in this way. He was literally just skin and bones, nothing else. You could see every part of his internal systems through your eyes. And this doesn't happen from living in a refugee camp. This happens from what you are fleeing from, in addition to being in the refugee camp. My 6-year-old son saw this, Kareem. He said, Baba, why don't people share the food that they have to eat? I said, I don't know, Kareem, but that's why it's important for us to give whatever we can, even if it's very little. There was a student here some years ago when our students were raising funds for the people of Gaza. And I noticed her, and she wasn't eating so much food, an undergrad, just like many of you. And I got a little bit worried. And so I asked her, is she doing okay? And she said, yes. And I said, is your family okay? Everyone's fine? And she said, yes. And I said, then why aren't you eating so much? And she said, aren't you the one that told us that the Prophet ﷺ said, food for one is enough for two, and food for two is enough for four? And I said, yes. And she said, these last few weeks, I've been eating all of my meals with my brothers and sisters in Palestine. A banana, a bagel, something simple. Not so that I have less, but so somebody else has more. These are the kind of things that you can do as well. But it has to be rooted in love, real firm conviction and values of why you do what you do. When I met this woman, she was 78 years old. Her name is Dulu. Dulu told me about how the Rakhine army and the Buddhist mobs came to her home. They killed her husband as well as some of her children and grandchildren. And she sat with me now in her tent with such a fire inside of her. And I said, what do you want, Dulu? And she said, I want justice. And the relief agencies that I was there with, they said, tell her we can't bring her justice. That's not what we do. And she said, I just then want a safe place for my family to be able to live. I want you to think about this. This woman's 78 years old. Many of the cultures that you come from in this beautiful room of diversity, people get married at a young age back home, wherever back home is. Even if she got married when she was 28, which likely she got married much younger, but even if she didn't, that means they took the life of her life partner, her companion, of 50 years in front of her eyes. They did it in front of her grandchildren. The type of children your MSAs are trying to support in this charity week. There's a lot of chaos and commotion on different days that I was there. There was one day that we were sitting on top of a hill, and all of a sudden, about 200, 300 people came to where I was standing, and I had no idea what was going on. And then when I looked to their faces, they were all looking towards the horizon in the direction of their home country. And you could see in broad daylight that there was large black clouds of smoke coming from fires being lit. And they were all being taken back to places that were difficult. This woman's name is Layla Begum. And this is one of the hardest du'as that I've ever had to make in my life. That I met Layla Begum on the second time I went to these camps. And she herself is 26 years old in this photo. And she asked me if we could pray together. And I said, yes, of course, we can pray together. And so we started and we prayed for Layla Begum's husband and her 1-year-old daughter, who she had witnessed soldiers kill in front of her own eyes, before they then assaulted her in a way that no woman should ever be treated. They burned her house down, all of her belongings, and the bodies of her two loved ones were left as nothing but ashes. We then prayed for her other two children, a 5-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son, who she managed to escape with, and they walked for 20 days. And she said soldiers pursued her the entire way. This is what an oppressor does. This is what an abuser does. They seek to maintain control and dominance. And we then prayed also for the different people, the corpses of her own countrymen that she came upon, littering the pathways as she tried to journey to a place of refuge. We then said a special prayer for people of Bangladesh that she met who helped to pay for the tent that we're in. As a refugee, she was guaranteed this hut, no cost. But when she got there, the person who was deciding who comes in and not said that you can only come in if you give me 800 taka, the local currency in Bangladesh. This woman just fled for her life with her babies. She has nothing. And so she and her children now had to go and live out in the wilderness by themselves. And these people who lived in the surrounding area, who had nothing, pooled their money together to help her get what was the equivalent of $8 American. But they dug deep, and they did it with real love. And that's what you're being asked to do. With real love, you come together. And the most important part of that dua that we made is that we sat and prayed for people like yourselves. In the midst of all of this difficulty and all of this darkness, a light came on this woman's face who literally has just lived through real hell. And she made me promise that wherever I go and tell her story, that I will tell the people there just how grateful she is. Not just because of the support of donors and volunteers and others like that they help to provide a hut that's not even a tenth of the size of this room, or a space of just stillness where she doesn't have to worry about who's going to come in and mistreat her and abuse her. She said that the most important thing she received was that she was remembered, that the world hadn't forgotten her, that they knew what she was going through, that there was people who were simply trying their best to help. That's all you're being asked to do. It can be really easy to get distracted. You're here as students, so be students. Religion can be confusing. It's not that hard to be Muslim. You don't want to be good at Islam. You want to be a good person who's also Muslim. You got to find strength and confidence within yourselves. There's amazing individuals that are stepping up as students every day to think out with creativity, real beauty, real ihsan. What is it that I have capacity to do? And I'm going to get it done. Muslim students at this school have helped to build programs around sustainability, food insecurity, other types of things. I had a student some years ago when the first polar vortex happened in New York City who came to me and said, the homeless people must be really cold. And I said, yeah, it must be crazy to live on the streets right now. And then a week later, she came to me and she asked me if I had a pair of socks. And what she had decided to do by herself was knock on every dorm door in her dorm and ask everybody to give just one pair of socks, that she started to then go to people who were living on the streets. What it takes to think that way is a sense of self-confidence and self-love. You can't give to somebody something that you don't possess in the first place. It's not anybody else's responsibility to be the blessing that you can uniquely be. And the willingness to share it has to come from within. And I show you this for a couple of reasons. One, I need you all to understand, as students of this community, that it doesn't take a lot to be with people where they are in their struggles. I leave my kids, who I love more than anything, and their mother, who I love even more than that, regularly to go to be with others. Because I value what I have and I want to be a part of letting people know. But even more importantly than going to be with others, so that you all can understand. As a community that I care more deeply about than most anything in my life, that you also have the ability and capacity to be with people in their time of need. So we're gonna have the khutbah in a minute. I just want you to take an individual point of reflection. Because you've probably gotten a text message or an email or something about Charity Week. As a group, you've already raised about $32,000, mashallah. Just think, if each one of you was doing as much as you can, how much more could that be? You can't be in a mode of self-deprecation, because giving love to somebody else doesn't start by hating on yourself. But with real confidence, with a real recognition of what God has endowed you with and a gratitude and appreciation of that, don't let this day of Jummah end before you do whatever you can to be a part of this effort. You open up a phone and you take that link and you share it with everybody in your contacts. You go to your families and you take their phones. You don't get along with your families? Grab somebody else's phone and do it with theirs. You think about what it is that you can do, not what it is that someone else should do or what you do not have the ability to do. And you're going to be left in wonders of what it is that you have the ability to achieve and get done. It has to be with real love, real mahabbah. The students are hosting an event tonight at Tandon that all of you should go to if you can, to be a part of it and to celebrate the achievement. You want to think also, it's a great thing that we can express gratitude for, the ability to have concern for others. Not everybody has that. And to be around people who also have the ability to have concern for others. Because most spaces, they don't come together on that as a gathering point. As we begin the khutbah in a couple of minutes, I just want you to take a moment to be with the stillness and the reflection, to just think about not what you haven't done in the last few days, but what are you going to get done today? What are you going to make sure to do on this Mubarak day of Jummah to assist somebody who right now is not in any mode of helplessness? To help someone doesn't assume that they're helpless, but the recognition with real love as to how you are going to simply do what is right because it's the right thing to do. So just be in the stillness as we make my way to the front of the room. And just as a reminder again, I wanted to do it a little bit differently today because I think it's an important thing and to honor the ritual of Jummah itself and what goes into it. inshallah ta'ala, Allah will accept from us prayer in the khutbah in this augmented form. Wallahu ta'ala alim wa billahi tawfiq. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. الحمد لله. الحمد لله ثم الحمد لله. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We thank him, we praise him, we glorify him. We beseech him to send his choicest salutations upon his most beloved sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, upon all those who choose to tread his path until the last day. The days that surround us, there's immense opportunity to be a part of something that's much bigger than yourself. And right now, there's a lot of difficulties that people are going through, but it also means that there's no shortage of opportunity to be a source of real goodness, a source of light and support for others. I've met some of these people whose narratives I shared with you years ago, but their names, their images, their stories are going to be things that I don't ever forget. For no other reason other than they're people just like you and I. How we see others is not indicative of who they are, but how we see others will tell us a lot about ourselves. Nobody's going to be able to choose your choices for you. You have to choose them yourself. And so today, on this blessed day of Jummah, choose confidence over arrogance. Choose to see your beauty. Choose to see your potential of being a source of goodness and light, over choosing to say that somebody else might be able to do what it is that I have the ability to do. You don't need anybody's permission to do something good. You just have to see within yourself what the blocks are and then push them out of the way. that you get done what you can, and the rest of this world is able to benefit from the blessing that is uniquely you. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله تعالى فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا مولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله. For a moment, you also want to just see yourself the way that Allah sees you. You don't want to see yourself in the way that the world makes you at times see yourself. The boxes that they seek to put you in, the formulaic processes of success that they teach you to chase after. Let people have this dunya, man. Work for something that's much bigger than that. Just think deeply about a moment that you're in that can literally never come again. You're going to choose as to how it is that you approach it. So a simple share of the link can be the equivalent of what might be a handful of dollars for us. It is enough to get a refugee woman who has witnessed deep atrocity, a home that is a space of sanctuary and stillness. It might just be somebody else's issue or a distraction is going to take you elsewhere. But you literally doing what you can will be the difference between a young child feeling as if they are remembered and loved versus being forgotten. You can say, is it really that simple? And I can tell you that there's other people who will give you something else as an indication. There's somebody who's blessed to serve this community with people who work side by side on our team to serve this community. That's not how we choose to do it here. We're not going to look at what we have to give up, but where others will gain. Where we might have to lose or face detriment, but it's about where others will benefit. And fundamentally, you just think about the heart that you want to have. You want the heart, and when the opportunity is there, to deepen in a sense of self-recognition, it takes the opportunity or it passes it away. So do what you can. I've seen things that some of you may or may not have seen. I can tell you that every moment of support is going to make a difference. You have to do it with real love, real mahabbah, so that even when you're tired and you're exhausted, you're going to still get up and get it done. That's what people are waiting for you and I to do, to recognize what this religion is really about, what the point is of all of this, to simply just go out and do what we have the opportunity to do because of no other reason other than it's the right thing to do. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وفي الآخرين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا. يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين. اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين. اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين. We begin this supplication in your name, Ya Allah. We beseech you to send your choicest salutations upon your most beloved, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. We ask that you shower your infinite mercy upon this gathering, granting each and every one who is present here and our loved ones only the best in this world and the best in the next. We ask, Ya Allah, that if all of us are meant to be together only at this time, at this place, whether we are young or old, male or female, regardless of our race, our ethnicity, our social class, our country of origin, our cultural heritage, whether we are Muslim or come from a different walk of life, Ya Rabbi, our individual hearts are meant to be in the presence of all of their hearts that are gathered here, only at this time, at this place, and gather us all together again in the best of places in the world beyond this one. Increase us, Ya Allah, in all that is good. Increase us in courage, compassion, and confidence. Protect us from affliction, anxiety, or anguish of any kind. Remove from our hearts any feelings of bitterness, jealousy, animosity, or envy towards any of your creation. Grant us hearts that are filled with understanding and hope, hearts that are drawn towards things of real goodness and beauty, hearts that find themselves deep in your remembrance, for indeed in your remembrance do hearts find rest. Bless this community, Ya Allah, and be pleased always with our efforts for your sake and your sake alone. Put barakah into the studies of these young people. Grant them tawfiq, Ya Rabbi. Increase them in sincerity, and make every day that they live in this world a day that is filled with more and more success, both in terms of what they gain here and for the world beyond this one. Help them and us to see ourselves the way that you see us, to see our potential, to see what we have to offer, and to not let any day pass us by before we do something of true benefit, both for others as well as ourselves. Grant success to them in their efforts to assist young children, orphans throughout this world, and make them, Ya Allah, from amongst those who are granted the company of your beloved, peace and blessings be upon him, who has said that there is a great ajr, a great reward, nothing less than his company in your Jannah for the one who takes care of orphans in this world. Protect us always from hearts that are not humble, tongues that are not wise, and eyes that have forgotten how to cry. Forgive us for our shortcomings and guide and bless us all. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين وأقيموا الصلاة